to be invited to speak with you today. And as Anya said, it's going to be very, very practical, very simple stuff. What I did when I was asked to make this presentation was, we sent, as we do regularly on other matters, we sent an email to all our principals around the country, 3,300 principals. We asked them to give us some feedback on what works in their school with parents, what's working, what's practical, what actually gives a positive, constructive result. And we got lots of ideas back, and I must say we were thrilled with the sense of positivity and the sense of constructive relationships. And of course, many of you, I'm sure, will be familiar with, last year we did a joint production, NPC and IPPN, on how it was called supporting each other, how parents' associations and principals can work together more effectively. And I think that has been very well received. And it is, let's say, taking down a lot of the barriers, and there were lots of barriers. Let's face it, I mean, up until maybe not a long time ago, if a principal teacher was asked, you know, what's a good parent association like, they probably say one that doesn't meet or one that doesn't exist, because there was a traditional fear, a traditional, I won't say resentment, but certainly a sense of unease and tension between principals in particular, but teachers also, and parents associations, which, you know, once you peel back a few layers, of course, it's ridiculous, because I mean, the children are, let's say, jointly in the interest of both parents and teachers, and nothing should get in the way of that. So I see there's a huge emphasis of people over here and very few over here. When I was in college, the lecturer, we had a psychology lecturer who played a trick on us one day. We were all over on one side, and he only looked in this direction. He totally ignored everybody over here. And a bit after a while, people started moving along the seats, because so if I start looking over towards this door now, you'll know what I'm doing over here. A very, very brief story about a principal teacher that I know in the US. He was changing jobs, and he was going to a new school, and he turned up for, let's say, a day's briefing from the outgoing principal of the school. And it was a high school someplace in, I think, Pennsylvania or someplace. He landed into the school anyhow, and he went to the reception area. There were 3 reception areas, a huge school, 4,000 students, three receptionists, and just, I suppose, you think your stereotypical, let's say, American, loud, strong personalities. Before he opened his mouth, he was basically told, sit over there, take a seat. And he was there for about 10 or 15 minutes, and there were several other people came in, and they were dispatched for various reasons in different ways. Eventually, the outgoing principal rang reception and said, has Mr. So-and-so arrived yet, the new principal? And they said, oh, maybe, so they inquired of his name, and he said who he was. Ah, sorry, we thought you were just a parent, he said. So, I mean, that story, I'm sure, would resonate with lots of parents. Traditionally, parents were not welcome in schools, because it was seen as, you know, let's say, not their place. So what I want to go through now really is a number of slides which will just outline maybe some of the things that do work and that have been proven to be successful in schools. Now, parental involvement in education, of course, starts not in school, but it starts at home. And I mean, that's something we can't forget. And from day one, kids are listening, and you know, some children start speaking maybe a year and a half, or maybe even a little bit earlier. More children can take several years longer. But the reality is that the biggest influence, I suppose, really on a child, as you know well, is from their very, very early days, and so some even say pre-birth, in terms of what language a child can absorb. Then, I suppose, just an issue, let's say, which I think maybe occupies lots of people's minds from time to time is, you know, baby talk against real talk. Some parents engage in a lot of baby talk, you know, goo-goo gaga type of stuff with kids. But I think with modern communication, and there's so much written about parenting, you know, I think that's very much a feature of the past. But nevertheless, I heard a parent recently I was picking up my own son outside school, and they were talking to a child, and I was stunned at how much of this kind of, you know, childish sounding language that the parent was actually engaging in. It took me back a bit. children love stories, and of course, being told stories is an absolute, I suppose, it's probably the richest form of communication you can have with a child in many ways. And kids love to be read stories. And then ultimately kids need to start telling their own stories. The thought process, right, you know, we've all seen a child who come to us and they've got so much inside their head and they can't get it out. They just can't. They can't. But with a certain amount of encouragement and with a certain amount of example, I suppose, and almost anticipation, the child can learn to put their first thought. It might be just maybe an object or some concept, and then of course it's about eventually getting children to put together maybe more than a few thoughts and get them in the right order and get them out into a speech. I know of a school, let's say, where at the moment the parent body are involved in a whole oral language development program led by the school and the parent association, and what their focus is on is getting children to be able to speak. Ultimately, that by the time they're in 4th, 5th, 6th class, they can stand up and speak to the classroom or a group of parents or any group. And I mean, Irish people traditionally are not good public speakers. We tend to kind of be maybe shy and reticent about public speaking. Other nations, I mean, we always, for generations, we also the Americans as being very, very confident people. And I understand that it's a very big feature of their education, this business of being required to actually learn how to speak to a group of people in public about whatever topic you wish. That of course isn't achieved overnight. I mean, sometimes children, let's say, in a classroom situation, you know, the child will speak maybe about something from their seat, and then it might be maybe from a standing position, maybe from sitting on a stool, and ultimately maybe in maybe assembly or some situation whereby there is actually, you know, an audience and such. And I think it's a wonderful place to get involved, because oral and oral language precede everything else. Unfortunately, you know, traditionally we moved into the business of teaching reading and writing too soon, and the research from the Scandinavian particular shows that there's nothing to be gained. In fact, if anything, there's more success when reading and writing are formally introduced later, because if you think about, let's say, you know, even the teaching of Irish in our system, up until recently we had children learning to read, write and speak Irish, albeit unsuccessfully, but without having spent sufficient time actually listening. No proper exposure to listening to good quality Irish. So it's about, I suppose, where language and speech comes together in a school situation. It's where that there's a sense of awareness by parents that they have a huge role to play at home in their child's language development. There's a new national literacy strategy, you know, as you probably have heard, Minister Quinn may have referred to this morning, I'm not sure, did he? It is a national, it's not just simply a strategy for schools, it's a national strategy for the whole country. And out of that, let's say, our parallel to a program called Ashter. I'm sure you're probably aware of a program called Ashter. It's a new program being developed mainly around language development for children in the, let's say, preschool and in the first 2 years in primary school, juniors and senior infants as well. And this program is based on, I think, a lot of action research, which, you know, I suppose it is broken down the steps and it is broken down the content into, let's say, very, very, you know, appropriate modules for schools. And the preschool year now, which children are in receipt of, are meant to be following this program as well. But it will take some time for it to be bedded down fully. Caper. Down in Cork, where I'm based, there's a chap called Martin Gleeson who has been doing a lot of work in schools for years about reading, and he calls it children and parents enjoying reading, or in other words, shared reading or paired reading. There's different names for it, but he calls it caper. And I have a 7-year-old, and he comes home and the one thing he doesn't want to do his homework, but he wants to do caper, because caper is not homework. It's seen as enjoying reading. It's a different process completely. It's not checked. And there's no record kept of it, other than the fact that there's a record of little books. They get a different book every night for 4 nights, for you know, other than the first and last week of term, right throughout the year. So they get a huge amount of exposure. And if they can't read the book, the parent reads it for them. And Just as a matter of interest, how many of you would be familiar with shared reading or in the children's school? Okay, almost, well over half anyway, so that's good. Library visits was one of the very strong, let's say, activities that principals reported on, where schools engaged their parent body to help take kids to the local library, because going to the library it seems to be a dying practice in many ways, because of, I suppose, Google and the internet and all the information that you can get there. But unfortunately, I suppose, the art of actually going and leafing through a book, well, in my opinion, will never be replaced by any form of digital publication. I mean, the digital world obviously is hugely important and it's here to stay, but I think we need to, in parallel, make sure that the joy of sitting down and reading a book is never lost. And the last one that I say on the literacy was the Write a Book scheme. How many of you are familiar with the Write a Book scheme? Not as many. The only time ever in my life where children at the end of the school term said, can we come in for 2 days next week to finish a project? At the end of 6th class, you know how kids are bursting to get out of school? Normally they'd be looking for a week off at the end and stuff. But they wanted to come back for 2 days because they needed to finish the Write a Book project. They'd written books. Basically, it's a project whereby, with guidance from the teacher, they learned how to actually construct and tell a story. It could be a detective novel. It could be a book about animals. It could be a book about their local history. It doesn't matter what the topic is, but they learn how to structure an introduction, chapters, you know, a build-up or some kind of a conclusion, and then they get to word process it into a computer, and then ultimately then it's done in a format whereby it's published. And in many cases, let's say they can engage with the physical process of binding it and presenting it. And I've never seen children so proud of a piece of work that they've done, so much so that they wanted to come in for 2 extra days, which we did. And to me, it was an indication of how much they actually loved what they'd achieved. So I think that's one that maybe needs a little bit more exposure, I said, to schools. Oral language. The parents and grandparents, I think, are a huge resource to schools from the point of view of local history and local culture and so on and so forth. I know, let's say that, again, based on how we got back from our members, lots of schools have grandparents coming in talking about their childhood. And it's a fascinating exercise, actually, to see, you know, let's say, and with questions prepared by children about their childhood, to see grandparents enjoying that experience of actually talking about their own youth to kids today, and the children in absolute awe at what their grandparents got up to in terms of, and the one big word that comes out is freedom. The freedom they had to roam, the freedom they had to do things, go places. You know, like nowadays, unfortunately, our kids, we can't leave them out of our sight because of all of the fears that there are about their safety and so on and so forth, and traffic being a huge problem, of course. But like, I mean, it seems that children who were let's say, in primary school up to maybe the mid-70s were able to, when on Saturdays or holidays or long weekends, they'd get up in the morning and they could be gone for the day, and their parents might know where they were, or who they were with, or when they were coming home, or any of those questions, and there was little notice taken of it. And obviously they had, you know, a much harsher childhood as well, as far as they didn't have as many. In fact, they had little or none of the consumer sort of iPads and, you know, all the various technologies now the kids are, you know, can't live their lives without almost. And some kids today like would be shocked at the idea of not having all of this, but yet on balance, I think when the grandparents compare their childhood with the kids today, they think that the kids have it easy. The kids think the grandparents had a better childhood. But it's a lovely way to engage children with their parents and their grandparents, coming to the school, positively recounting their life stories, and of course, like a lot of the local folklore, local names, even in urban areas, let's say, are still very much alive with particularly the grandparents of children. Food fairs, well, apparently seems to be a very, very common feature of schools involving parents in learning in terms of bringing in, let's say, you know, where you have different ethnicities involved in the school, that there might be, let's say, an Italian night or a Pakistani night, or you know, the food and culture and music from different parts of the world. And I think I was quite surprised actually at the volume of people who said that this was something that was happening in their schools. Reeling in the years, I suppose, like again, that's linked with the idea of where parents, let's say, engaged, where the Parents Association and the school engages in documenting and recording the history of the school just through photographs. And I know one particular school where when they went to the community and looked for photographs, and where they were scanned and handed back straight away, so there was nothing lost, that the level of interest, let's say, from people who were not even within the school, who had no kids in the school, or who never attended the school, was such that, you know, several inquiries made as to could people come and see, because they saw it like as a folk history of their community. And I think I suppose it's just so sad, like, that, you know, too many history lessons and too many geography lessons are totally extracted from books, when the people who make the school happen, namely the parents, have so much to offer. And I think, I suppose, you know, in preparing for this session, it has encouraged me, you know, more to I think there's an onus on all of us, including us as principals, to actually encourage more of this kind of involvement, because it is so important, and of course it's largely cost-free, and it adds so much value to the overall experience. Numeracy. I'm just going to go about the literacy strategy. There's also a numeracy strategy, which is less talked about, but probably as important, if not more, in some respects. I think just some of the things, let's say, where parents and teachers sit down around numeracy and exploring what can parents do at home, what can they do at school. The dinner table in the evening is the classic example of a child who is 2-3 years of age. How many for dinner, counting them out, naming them, how many knives, how many forks, how many spoons. You've all done it, I'm sure. But that's most kids' first experience of dealing with numeracy, quantifying the number of objects, basically speaking, required for an event. And it's good fun, but it's profoundly important that children can learn that, because it's covering 3 of the 4 pre-number activities that they will hit in junior infants. I won't go into know, because that's not the purpose of today, really. Feeling, I use the word feeling meters, kilograms, liters. You know, having an object and actually, you know, saying this stick is a meter long. They use the stick to measure across the kitchen, or that there's a kilogram bag of sugar, and that they can feel it, and they can actually feel the heaviness of it, so that, you know, that they can develop a sense of concept. Unfortunately, too many children come into school without those concepts developed, and it's very, very difficult, because concept development happens slowly over a period of time. It has to be linked with real-world concrete materials. A child will never understand, let's say, that this bottle of water has, whatever it is, 40 or 50 cls in it, when in fact, you know, unless they've actually held the bottle and they've drunk that amount of water at some stage. The same applies to time. I mean, how often, let's say, you say to a child, 5 more minutes, and they don't know whether that's, they don't know whether that's 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days. Well, not 5 days, obviously, but, you know, unless you, like, let's say the timer on the oven or the timer on someone's clock, they have to actually set these times, let them run, and actually, you know, they know that there's 2 types of time. We call real time and there's busy time. 5 minutes when you're busy feels like 1 minute. 5 minutes when you're let's say, just enjoying yourself is obviously much longer. The guesstimation of distance, of time, of volume, weight is absolutely essential. The children who come to schools with these senses, with these concepts already developed, give them such an advantage. And I'll come on later to let's say, a program which is actually to sit down to address these things, where in schools let's say, where kids haven't had that experience before they come. The calendar, counting backwards. Being able to count. I mean, lots of them can count. They can count way up, even at 3-4 years of age, maybe up to 100 or more. But counting backwards is a real challenge for some kids. Insofar as it forces them to think about numbers in a different way completely. And again, like it's where these things are done with humour and in the right time, and where children are like they're not being told they're learning maths. They're just involved in fun and games effectively in the home and in the school. The calendar. Lots of children find it very difficult to actually deal with the concept of calendar time, days, weekends, months. Time in particular is a very, very complicated. I mean, like with for example, linked, you have it's a simple concept of measurement of from A to B. The same with volume, the same with liquid, weights. But time is the one, like when the French digitized when they digitalized all measurement back in whatever it was, Napoleon's time, based on the metric system. The one thing that they couldn't track was time, because it's 24 hours in a day, 12 months to go around the sun, and 60 minutes in an hour, and so on and so forth. It's a very, very tricky area, and teaching the child the time in the clock is very, very tricky. Lots of kids don't get it for a long, long time, because you've got 24-hour, 12-hour clock, and then of course you have digital and analog, and it's and there's no place better to start than with a broken clock or a broken watch, and let them actually, where you can actually wind up, the old alarm clocks where you can wind up, and you can, by winding, the minute hand will automatically drive on the hour hand as well. That's a fantastic asset to have in every classroom, in every home, so that kids can actually literally make the time move, and they can see the impact of the relationship between hours, minutes, and seconds. And it's a number of schools talked about how they've addressed this in their schools by actually gathering up old clocks, bringing them in, having a plastic box full of them, so that the different teachers they can pull these out and do a session on time with time machines, with clocks. It might seem as obvious as it is long, but you cannot teach this effectively in school with just simply out of a book. Ludo, snakes and ladders, drafts. Fantastic, simple, low-cost resources for the purposes of, again, getting children counting, adding, and anything that's done with a competition, and of course, kids love. Ludo, I suppose, several schools have, through the parents, donating, let's say, all sets of Ludo, and the junior infants, and on wet days, where they need to be occupied, where they can't go to play, that they will have boxes of Ludo that they've been taught how to play the game sufficiently, so they can actually they can independently go to the box, get it out, set it up, and have a number of games. Some schools say that they put them in their order: Ludo, snakes and ladders, maybe for senior infants, drafts for first class, and then of course maybe chesting is the other classic board game for the kids from there up. Which you can imagine, let's say, the wealth of and breadth of experience the kids get from all of those different kind of games, which are tried and tested. They're hundreds of years old, and they develop new capacities within kids. And of course, you have some children who are very, very good at these games who might not be good at other things. And it's yet another important part of the school life, to be able to actually have children feel success in some area that maybe especially kids who aren't succeeding maybe academically as well, or maybe in the sporting field. How many, how long, how much? It's just important that we question children so that they're forced to think. The closed question is, where the answers are yes or no. But an open question is where a child has to actually think and expand their thought process to be able to actually give an answer. And if you ask how many meters from that door over to that door there, I mean, unless they've actually, they could say anything from 4 to 200, unless they've got some concept of what a meter is roughly. So these are just kind of a random selection of the most common areas that the principals, as I said, have engaged with parents on. Have any of you heard of wigwam? I must say I hadn't heard of it either, because but a school reported us that it's a program which I haven't actually laid my hands on yet, but it's a program whereby parents help out, I think, 2 or 3 times a week with specific concrete materials in junior and senior infants under what they call directed or constructive play, where the children they believe they're playing games, but in fact what they're doing is they're going through key pre-number skills and concepts, but because it's very, very labour intensive, each group of 3 or 4 children need an adult to keep them on track and to direct them. The parents have played a huge role in their school. 5, okay, thanks. These are, I mean, I won't go into detail here because they're so obvious. These are some of the activities that other schools have found that having parents involved, has just added quality and reduced stress for teachers, because managing a group of kids, I mean, infant classes they can be, it's 28, 29, 30 children, is not fun, and it's a very, very challenging job. The sheer physical management of them, especially when they're going outside the classroom, going on visits, and the responsibility, like, without availing of the parental capacity that exists, it's, you can say it's madness, because it's a huge pool of talent. Now, on that point, right, one issue, of course, for schools is that because of child protection policy now, there has to be vetting. So, I mean, before parents can actually be brought in to be involved in whatever the activity is, guard vetting has to be applied for. And I understand that the waiting time now has been reduced significantly lately, but it's something that should not be sort of overlooked, because it's so important for so many obvious reasons. Some schools are doing cooking classes. They've got parents maybe who've got certain skills and talents in different areas, and it's the ability, I suppose, of the principal and maybe the chairperson of the Parents Association to knock heads together and sort of say, look, what can we do with what we have? It's very easy to be negative all the time about resources and so on and so forth. We're in a world now, as you all know, that there is no extra, and there won't be for a long, long time. And I think we're going to have to go into our own pockets in terms of our own capacity to do more with the talent and the abilities that exist within the community. Some schools now do an actual inventory once every couple of years. They actually write out to parents, if you're interested in being involved in our school, what strengths or skills or background do you have, and it's amazing. You might get 10% return on it, but I mean, every percent you get is working capital for the schools. Now, the reality, of course, like I said, it's not all sugar and pie. From a principal's point of view and from a class teacher's point of view, there are 3 kinds of parents who are helping. There's the reliable stalwarts. You know who they are, they know who you are, and they know, and both principal and parent knows that it's just a lift the phone. There's the well-meaning enthusiasts who are really eager to help and have huge energy, and with some very light touch management, they can be a massive benefit to the school. And then there's what I've titled the OCHers. The obsessive compulsive helpers. It's only me. I had a parent who managed to walk past the hatch every morning, and always with an excuse that and her line was, "It's only me," was her opening line, and there was never a morning that she didn't find some reason to come in to have some word with somebody in the school. Constantly, as I said, the compulsive helper. we often felt that, she would have made a wonderful teacher or principal, but she just didn't obviously go for it. But anyway, at a bigger picture level, right, parents and their influence on the school. Parents obviously must be involved in school policy. That goes without saying now. The legislation is very, very specific about it. The trouble is, not every parent, and I say this with the utmost of respect, because, as I say, to use the phrase, I'm a parent myself, and I know school from that side as well. But not everyone can separate the big picture, the whole school, from my own daughter or my own son, and that's a prerequisite. If parents are going to help out in school and be part of making a school a parent-friendly place, they've got to be able to separate, those two particular pictures. Parents typically would not be. A question we often get is, when should parents be allowed or invited in to take part in policy development? Well, I would say that mathematics policy for the school isn't up for grabs. It's not up for grabs for the teachers, for that matter, because it's predetermined by the NCCA, the National Council for Curriculum and Assessment. We can't at school level decide, we don't like this bit, we're going to replace that with something else. But something like behaviour, or something like homework or health and safety, those kind of organisational, relational type of situations, yes, parents must be involved, and it is absolutely, in fact, they won't work unless parents are not only involved, but parents take ownership of it, because without parents buying into, let's say, the culture of the school in terms of bullying or in terms of homework or whatever it is, then you are literally pushing a rock up a hill, because who am I to tell you? You know far more than I do about this. It is essential that parents are given not just their say, but that they're part of driving the agenda on these policies. Okay, I think I'm within time. The nature of the role. Again, there have to be ground rules. One ground rule that a lot of schools apply is that if a parent wants to come in and help out, let's say for example with shared reading, or with maths, with the wigwam program, they must be willing to work in a classroom other than a classroom with their own children. And I think you can see the obvious sort of sense behind that. When a parent says, no, I'll help out, I'll give you 4 hours a week or whatever, but it must be in my daughter's classroom, obviously there's a conflict of interest there straight away, and it doesn't make sense. The ground rules apply to the staff in the school as well, as far as parents. Parents aren't, many parents would say would have difficulty with the way parent-teacher meetings are constructed. Some schools give far more information than others. Some schools are maybe quite good at interpreting test results or assessments than others. So it's a two-way street. Respect for each other is very, very important. And I suppose my concluding picture really is of this. I've coined that phrase from, it was a Troker expression about 10 or 15 years ago. They were talking about black and white people. They have differences, but they are equal as human beings. It was an anti-racism slogan. I think it fits here too. Parents and teachers were equal in terms of status, but we just have different roles. And once we accept our different roles and those boundaries that go with it, then I think there's an unlimited capacity for development and for learning in schools. Can I conclude with one very short story, Anya? This is a true story. It happened to my sister-in-law. She was teaching out in Springfield in Tala in Dublin as a young sub-teacher back about 15, 20 years ago. And one morning, this parent came in, gunning, as they say, for her, right? Absolutely. The steam was so hot, the poor woman was almost in a state of epilepsy. And it was about some incident in the class on the previous day. But the moment she started talking about the incident, my sister-in-law suddenly realised that there was a gross misunderstanding based on what the child had told the mother. It was I can't remember the detail, but it was a language issue. One word was misinterpreted, which changed the whole story. So Denise and I let her talk, and eventually, when she finished up with her 5 minutes of giving out, Denise began to say, well actually, no, what happened was as follows. And as she told the mother what had happened, Denise said, she could see suddenly the embarrassment, the blood drained out of the poor woman, right? She suddenly realised that she had jumped the gun, she had gone over the top on something that was completely wrong. So for finishing here, she was highly embarrassed and she wanted to slip out of the classroom. But my sister-in-law said to her, look, I'll do a deal with you, she said. If you promise me not to believe half of the things that your child says happens in school, I promise I won't believe half the things that the child says what happens in your home.